I think
Or you could take the lamps.
Oh.
yeah.
I mean, these are, I like two pairs that are the same prescription.
Well, I think we are at this point sufficiently in the room and on the Zoom, and an appropriate 3 minutes after the hour. I sometimes wait until 7 minutes, but it's a beautiful evening. You could still get out of here while the sun's out. You never know. You never know. So it is wonderful to be together with everybody who is here and there, and we've got. Just for the folks that are in the room who should know this, we can all see you, which is awesome and great, and we should be able to hear you. So you can participate fully in this session tonight. And what we can do after the session is have Rachel will email out a PDF of all the slides that I'm using tonight. So I did decide, kind of late in the game, to make use of the Machzor itself for this session. And so if you are at home and you have the Rosh Hashanah Machzor, feel free to grab it. Don't worry, though, because everything that I'm talking about, everything that's in the Machzor, is something that you will have access to on the slides that I'm going to share out in just a moment or two, and we'll make sure that everybody on the Zoom and in the room is seeing the slides and all that. This is the first of 3 sessions. I think they're all 3 in a row. Yeah, 1, 2, 3. In a row. Pre-high holiday learning. We're in the month of Elul. It's a time to prepare your heart for the high holidays, and that is the goal. And so sacred words, sacred days. That's the overarching theme for myself and Rabbi Weiss and Rachel to take a look and to see, kind of what we are doing over those 10 days, but really in the lead up to those days as well. So I'm going to do my best to make sure that the screen is being shared and that I am also sharing sound when we get to that. And we can optimize for video sharing. Look at all these things. Okay, great. We can do all those things. And now my Zoom folks should hopefully be seeing the Zoom screen, the screen. And what do I do to get them back here now? Let's see. Okay. Okay, hold on. Let's see. Show meeting. Yeah, there we go. Great. Okay. So let's see if that worked. Right now, Zoom folks, are you seeing a screen that says pre-high holiday series? Great. Thank you to the Schaefers for those enthusiastic thumbs up. That's great. And for virtual thumbs up, I love those too. And hopefully when we get to it, you'll also hear the sound of a couple of videos that I'm going to share. And in fact, we're gonna do one of those in just a moment. And if you came in, come get some books. Oh, you already did. Oh, look at you. Okay, awesome, great. So without further ado, we're gonna bless over sacred study, because really we are always learning words of Torah, even if it's not specifically Torah study. La'asok b'divrei Torah, the last 3 words of the blessing that says, God, thank you for making it a mitzvah to engage in these words of Torah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kishanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Amen. So with that, our topic tonight is U'Netaneh Tokef, which is a singular. I should go over there. All right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Go down. Maybe it'll do it now. Okay, great. Fantastic. Which is a single phrase of prayer that many people will kind of almost hear in their mind's eye as they, or their mind's ear, I guess, as it is. Just kind of hearing that, and also refers to a whole complex assortment of prayers that we're going to talk about tonight. A string of prayers. So we're going to take a look at it. But we're going to start, and one of the good ideas that Rachel had, she only has good ideas, was to do a mixture of the melodies and the words and the study. So we're going to start with our very own canto.
Tokef kerushot hayom ki hu nora ve'ayom uvoti naseh malchutecha bikon bechesed kisecha v'teishem alav Hamet ki atahu dayan u'mochiach v'yodea v'ahen v'chotem v'sofer u'moneh v'tizkor kol hanishkachot v'tiftach et sefer hazichronot u'me'elav yikareh v'chotam yad kol adam bo.
So for me, U'Netaneh Tokef, when I hear those words, I actually don't hear the prayer. The first thing that I hear when I hear U'Netaneh Tokef is boom. It's Nadia, our accompanist, Rabbi Cantadroller's accompanist, hitting those low bass notes, boom, which precede U'Netaneh Tokef Kedushat Hayom, in the version that Cantadroller had sang for many years. Extra points if you noticed anything interesting about the video.
Was it done during COVID?
It was our construction high holidays in the Jim Rouse Theater. So that was our construction high holidays when we were not able to be in the sanctuary. And everyone who knows that we've had a flood in our offices, and anyone who asked me about it, I said, it could have been so much worse because the water came right up to the doors of the sanctuary, but not into the sanctuary. And much as I appreciated having the Jim Rouse Theater available to us, I don't really want to go back there for high holidays, and that's where we would have been. So, so here we are in this prayer, and we are going to take a look at the text itself, and what I'm sharing up on the screen is a very, very, very old, one of the earliest extant machzors, the prayer book for high holidays. And this is a handwritten scribal machzor, really intended exclusively for the prayer leader themselves. This is the page of U'Netaneh Tokef in the 13th century German Worms machzor. Before looking at the text, though, I want to tell you the legend and the story of U'Netaneh Tokef. And the legend concerns a wealthy, well-respected and very knowledgeable businessman in the town of Mainz named Rabbi Amnon. Rabbi Amnon of Mainz, 11th century in Germany, in the German community of Mainz. The story is told, he is well-respected, he is one of the wealthiest people in the Jewish community, and the archbishop comes to him and says, we need you to convert in order to send a message to the Jews. We want you to convert. And Rabbi Amnon comes back to the archbishop and says, please give me 3 days to consider it. 3 days go by. Rabbi Amnon does not show up. The archbishop sends for Rabbi Amnon to come, and they bring him, and the archbishop says, will you convert to Christianity? And he says, I have decided that I will not, at which point they cut off one of his fingers. Will you convert to Christianity? They cut off another finger. Will you convert to Christianity? Another finger. Okay, 20 times. Fingers and toes all cut off. This is what the story says. All of his fingers, all of his toes cut off one at a time. He refuses to convert to Christianity, at which point, having cut off all of his fingers and toes, the archbishop is done with him and says, get him out of here. And they carry Rabbi Amnon home to his house. It says that they carry him on a shield. So if you imagine like a large metal shield, they put him on a shield. he's got no fingers, he's got no toes, he's not going to walk home. And as it happens, says the story, this was immediately prior to Rosh Hashanah. And Rabbi Amnon, maybe healing, probably not healing, from his wounds, tells his children he wants them to carry him on the shield to the synagogue. They arrive at the synagogue on Rosh Hashanah at the Musaf service in the afternoon, and they arrive just as the Kedusha prayer is about to be said. Kadosh, 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 right? Up on our toes, imitating the angels. And Rabbi Amnon is carried in and carried up to the bima, and he interrupts the chazan, and he says, I want to offer a prayer. And he prays the words of U'Netaneh Tokef as we have them to this very day, and then, right then and there on the bima, he dies. That's the story of Rabbi Amnon of that's the story, the origin story of U'Netaneh Tokef. And I am here to title this section of the... Oh, wait. I forgot a part of the story. Okay, I forgot a part of the story. 3 days later, he appears in a dream to Rabbi Kalonimus ben Meshulam, who is a very, very famous rabbi, also in the town of Mainz. He's a descendant of a long line of paitanim, liturgical prayer writers, composers, and he appears to him in this dream, and he repeats the prayer and commands Rabbi Kalonimus to go and teach this prayer to the world. Okay, so now you've got the whole story. And I am here to title this part of the section as High Holiday Mythbusters, because this story about Rabbi Amnon of Mainz appears for the first time in the 13th century in a compilation called Or Zarua, the light that is sown, the light that is spread for the righteous. It's a compilation of all kinds of mystical stories, also from the German Rhineland. And by the way, Kalonimus ben Meshulam is the rabbi of Mainz during the Rhineland massacres. So let's just say things were pretty dark for the Jewish community during his time. So this tale of Rabbi Amnon and his prayer and his martyrdom and his death and his refusal to convert, and the transmission by a dream to Rabbi Kalonimus, all of that appears for the very first time in the 13th century in this mystical treatise, or Zarua, whereas the words of U'Netaneh Tokef actually appear much earlier. In point of fact, people didn't know this for a long time, and so this story of Rabbi Amnon, by the way, appears in our Machzor as well. It talks about Rabbi Amnon of Mainz, who martyred himself and uttered these words. It's right here in our 21st century Reform movement Machzor. So we perpetuate this story about Rabbi Amnon of Mainz. But the Cairo Geniza, for anyone who's visited Cairo and probably went to the Ben Ezra Synagogue in Coptic Cairo, the Cairo Geniza, which is one of the most important stashes of Jewish literature that's ever been discovered, has an estrada that is very, very clearly identified. And by the way, the Geniza, place where you put expired sacred texts, things that get piled and piled and piled and piled and piled on top of each other. And so the strata is very important, like where it is in the layers of compressed sacred words. So the strata where the words of U'Netaneh Tokef were found is unquestionably dated to the 9th century. And at least one scholar believes that actually U'Netaneh Tokef might have been composed in the land of Israel itself as early as the 6th century. So let's just say it's a very old text with an incredible, fantastical story, which is probably actually based on a Christian martyrdom story, because there are lots and lots of Christian stories. Anybody who's studied Christian texts will know that the Christian church, the Catholic Church rather, was fascinated by people who got their fingers cut off and then their limbs cut off, and it's just a flesh wound. And so, that's thank you. That's real in Catholic martyrology. And by the way, there are lots of Jewish medieval tales as well that reflect that. But there's actually a contemporary tale that is not about a Jew who refuses to convert, but rather is a contemporary German tale of a saint who goes and refuses to say whatever he's supposed to say, and they cut off one finger at a time, and then they carry him out on a shield. So probably the Amnon Mainz tale is a bit of a Baba Maisa, also because there are no other records of this, the wealthiest, most respected nobleman amongst the Jews of Mainz in the 11th century. So he probably didn't exist, but why not teach about it anyway? Because the text itself is really worth learning and really worth thinking about and hearing and studying. The other reason why it is unlikely that the story of Amnon Mainz and Kalonimus ben Meshulam, who transcribes it, why this is the case is in part because the theology of U'Netaneh Tokef actually has its roots as far back as the Babylonian Talmud. There is a section of the Babylonian Talmud called Rosh Hashanah, and in the Talmud Rosh Hashanah, there is a discussion about turning back an evil decree, a decree that God has put on someone that something is going to happen, or that they're decreed for death, or they're decreed for something bad to happen. And there are 4 things, according to the Babylonian Talmud, that can change a decree. And they are giving charity, tzedakah, crying out in prayer, tefillah, changing one's name, machalif shem, and changing one's deeds, which we would call teshuvah. So, if you have a little bit in your head of the melodies of high holidays, you would probably be able to do this. U'teshuvah, u'tefillah, u'tzedakah. Shuvah, repenting, tefillah, crying out in prayer, tzedakah, giving righteously. These things change the decree. That, by the way, is also part of the U'Netaneh Tokef prayer. So we're going to take a look at the structure of the prayer. I'm going to pop the structure of the prayer up, but I'm also going to just pause for a moment for people who want to interrupt with questions, comments, or anything that they're interested in. Yes?
Why would the name change be something that would change the decree?
So when you change your name, you fool the angel of death. If God sends the angel of death for you, and an angel of death comes knocking and says, knock, 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 is there a Rabbi Craig Axler here? And they say, never heard of him. There's a guy named Shlomiel ben Shlomazel over here. And as well, no, I'm not looking for Shlomiel ben Shlomazel. I'm only coming for Craig Axler. The angel of death, apparently not so smart, goes on his way. So this, by the way, is why traditionally, when people say Mishaberach, they say Mishaberach for, I would be Shaya Gedalia ben Devorah. Shaya Gedalia, the son of my mother's Hebrew name, Devorah, omitting my father's Hebrew name because that also confuses the angel of death. But oftentimes when people have survived a life-threatening incident, they will change their name. People here probably actually had relatives or maybe themselves who changed their names after some kind of life-threatening experience. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes, your name is your identity, and without that, the angel of death can't take you. That's a whole different class.
Like Jacob and Israel.
Well, then Jacob's name is changed to Israel, and then goes flip-flopping back and forth between the two for the rest of the Torah. Yeah. Gary.
Was there a real statement of theology that prompted the development of this prayer?
Statement of theology. Well, we're going to look at it. We're going to look at the layout of the prayer.
Okay.
Yeah. This prayer is unquestionably a couple of distinct theologies. Much of this prayer is going to be very familiar to anyone who has spent more than a couple of years in high holiday services, because it's a real focal point, right? So in traditional practice, U'Netaneh Tokef, this series of prayers, comes in the Amidah of the Musaf service. The Musaf is the extra added service on Shabbat and on holidays. It happens in the afternoon, or between the morning and afternoon services, rather. And so this comes like right there in the middle of the Amidah. And it's placed there, I would say, number one, because that's like a dramatic culmination of the service, like, kind of you're building up to that, but also because of the story of Amnon Mainz showing up in the shul right before the Kedusha and first saying it in those times. That poses a little bit of a challenge, by the way, for Reform Jews, which is that one of the earliest reforms is eliminating the Musaf service. The Musaf is a remembrance of the animal sacrifices that took place in the temple. And one of the things that early Reform Judaism does is it says, we reject entirely the idea that animal sacrifice is something we want to see returned, or the rebuilding of the temple, and so therefore we're going to scrub the Musaf service out of prayer books. I went back to the Union Prayer Book Volume 2, the old UPB, which were the small black volumes like this. There was Volume 1 was for Shabbat, Volume 2 was for the high holidays, the Matzor. And I went back and I flipped through and I did as best as I could to try to find it. And I couldn't find any trace of U'Netaneh Tokef in there, which was interesting to me. I have to dig a little bit further. I'm sure it was a conscious omission, as much as omitting the Musaf service was as well. But from the time of Gates of Repentance, which is the maroon volumes that the Reform movement used from my youth on, until this book came, those Gates of Repentance had most of the elements of U'Netaneh Tokef in it, inserted into the morning service, and Mishkan HaNefesh has really the most faithful word for word that you're going to find. If you open up an Orthodox or conservative prayer book, you're going to find the exact same U'Netaneh Tokef prayers in the Hebrew as you'll find in Mishkan HaNefesh. So it's interesting to me that that by the time we get to our current prayer book, this set of prayers, while many, many other prayers in our prayer book have all kinds of reforms and alterations to them, this set of prayers actually appears in its most traditional form in Mishkan HaNefesh. So if you have a book in front of you, you're going to want to open it to page 174, which is where Mishkan HaNefesh starts. And if you don't have a prayer book in front of you and you're on the Zoom, don't worry about it, because I'm pausing here on the structure of the prayer. This is kind of my breakdown of the structure of the prayer. It's based on nothing except for like what I see as kind of distinct pieces, and we're going to actually read through them and intersperse some more music. Yes.
Can I just make a quick comment?
Sure.
I had a class with Rabbi Larry Hoffman talking about this, and he said that when they were coming up with the prayer book, that they were thinking about not having it, but that there was almost a revolution by congregants and congregations to have it back in the prayer book.
If you took these prayers out, so first and foremost, Temple Isaiah, I would say, is a traditional Reformed synagogue. That used to mean something, by the way. In the 70s and the 80s, that really meant something. I mean, we used more Hebrew. People they made the choice whether they would wear a kippah and a talit, right? All kinds of things that like define Temple Isaiah as a traditional Reformed synagogue. We still lean more tradition-based than many Reformed synagogues, not all. If we did not pause for these prayers, if these prayers were not part of our service, there are definitely plenty of folks in this congregation who'd be like, what? They didn't do? Fill in the blank. And we're going to hear those fill in the blanks. So yeah, I certainly would take every word that Larry Hoffman says with absolute authority, since he is the authority. Yep, absolutely. Great. Barry.
Just a question about the Hebrew words.
Uh-huh.
Tokef.
Yep.
So is that from the to gift or
so U'Netaneh, I will give over, or I will state, I will place the tokef, the seriousness. Tikifah is to hit or punch, right? It's like I'm going to lay it down. So yeah.
Okay.
Yep. So we'll see the opening phrase in just a moment. So the structure of the prayer itself. This is again. I'm going to go back to this as I unfold the prayer. These words are going to ascend to you. It's an introduction. We proclaim the sacredness of the day. And the sacredness is that God is not only the king, which is a constant theme of the high holidays, but God is somehow simultaneously the king and also the judge. And judgment is the primary thrust here. That metaphor of judgment gets extended. Not only is God the judge, God is judge and plaintiff, counselor and witness. That sounds a little bit like a kangaroo court to me, by the way. If God gets to be all of those, what's our role in this? I don't have a defense attorney here. God's the defense attorney and the prosecutor. So, and the witnesses and the judge. So, but yes, this is God's kangaroo court. All right, sheep and their shepherd. So, okay, that's a little softening of the imagery, perhaps. And there are other places in the High Holiday liturgy where you get, as the sheep pass beneath the staff, right? And God is counting us. That's a theme that actually begins in Elul, the idea that God is wandering around, collecting lost sheep and counting them. This is the season for doing that, right? I think the most familiar of the pieces of U'Netaneh Tokef's stretch is Rosh Hashanah Yikatevun. On Rosh Hashanah, this is written. On the fast of Yom Kippur, it is sealed, who by fire, who by water, and your imagination goes from there. Then you get this possible alteration of the decree, right? 3 things that can save you: teshuvah, tefillah, tzedakah. Repentance, prayer, and charity. And we're going to actually look at kind of an extension or a consideration of what those 3 would be. And then we try to, I wanted to write buttering up the judge, but I thought that was a little bit cheeky. So softening up the judge. God, you do not wish for the death of sinners, right? You only want us to recognize what we're doing wrong, to return in prayer, and to come back. So that's kind of the overall structure of the prayer as it unfolds. So great. We're on page 174, and the opening lines are not actually the lines that are sung and that attribute the name of the prayer, U'Netaneh Tokef. That's actually the second line. So let these words of sanctity ascend to you, for you, our God, our God and sovereign. Okay, let's let these things go up in prayer. And again, I know I myth busted him, but imagine Rabbi Amnon of Vance with no fingers and toes. Let us proclaim the power of this day, a day whose holiness awakens deepest awe and inspires highest praise for your dominion. For your throne is a throne of love, your reign is a reign of truth. So here we are in the proclamation, and it's interesting. The slides that I have here of the liturgy are all from Mishkan HaNefesh, from our current prayer book. That is a benefit of the pandemic years, is that they made a PDF that I still, or a PowerPoint rather, that I still have of the prayers. I'm not supposed to use them for prayer, but they didn't say can't use them for teaching. So this is kind of the opening salvo, right? This is a serious day, right? As if you didn't know it already. As if you hadn't figured it out, this is a serious day. So we extend the metaphor, and again, as I said, in truth, you are judge and plaintiff, counselor and witness. You inscribe and seal, you record and recount. You remember all that we have forgotten. And when you open the book of memories, it speaks for itself. For every human hand leaves its mark, an imprint like no other. By the way, that last line, an imprint like no other, is a fanciful additional translation or gloss that Mishkan HaNefesh puts on there. The Hebrew, the chotam yad kol adam bo, the stamp of the hand of every human being is upon it, right? So the idea, and this is rooted in the Midrash, is that every human being has a stamp, and every stamp is identifiable. This is your human passport, as it were. So pausing there again for a moment, and then we're going to do, I think, a little bit more musical rendition. Yes, we are indeed. Okay, great. Anybody with questions, comments, the Zoom or here?
Why do you think they changed it from the, what were the prior words, the signature, every person's signature?
Yes. Yeah, I should have brought a Gates of Repentance, because when Mishkan and Nefesh came out, there are certain phrases that really, when I first saw this book, just grabbed my attention and said, like, whoa, that's a really interesting way to recast that notion. This is one of those places where but it's with the exception of an imprint like no other, which is not there in the Hebrew text. That is it's a very faithful rendering of the Hebrew.
Is God portrayed outside of this prayer in this all-encompassing way that human beings, of all these things that you described, judge, plaintiff, counselor, witness, recorder, those are also human things. Is God described outside of this prayer in a similar way?
Yes. Yeah. The imagery around God throughout the high holidays and other places as well is extraordinarily human imagery. God is like us in every way except for that God is God. So the images that make sense to people are the ones that they can notice. Like, if God is the shepherd, well, I know a shepherd. I can see it. They got the crook, they got the robe, they wander around, they take care of the sheep, right? They're nice. They take care of the sheep. So that anthropomorphism of God is all over Jewish texts, and the high holidays is a very, very anthropomorphic time for God. The phrase, by the way, for the month of Elul, the month that we're in right now, is the king is in the field. This is like the overarching imagery of the month of Elul, and it comes from the notion that in the days when monarchs ruled a territory, once a year the monarch was known to go and walk around and check out what's going on. Otherwise, the monarch stays in the castle, sort of removed and protected from everything. But once a year, in the late summer, goes and takes a tour around all of their territory to check out what's really going on. So the idea of the monarch is in the field, like God is approachable. God might just stop by for a cup of tea. So or whatever God drinks. Others? Okay, we're going to go with another wonderful rendition of another piece of this. I'm going to actually mute the microphone in the room, because I don't want the microphone in the room to pick up the music on the Zoom. So if when I hit this YouTube video, friends on the Zoom, if you can't hear the music, somebody start sending up thumbs down emojis or wave your hands wildly, and I'll unmute the room. But for the moment, because I think otherwise the speakers and the microphone are going to fight with each other. So I am muting the.
U'Netaneh Tokef Kedushat Hayom Ki Hu Nura Ve'ayom Uvo Tinaseh Malchutecha Ve'yikon Bechesed Kisecha V'teshev alav b'emet. Emet ki ata hu dayan u'mochiach
Yeah, she's pretty good. That, by the way, is Cantor Angela Buchdahl, because this is a video that harkens back to the moment when Angela was the cantor of the congregation and not yet the senior rabbi of Central Synagogue in New York. Lots more to say about Central Synagogue and last Friday night, but in any case. So we're talking about interpreting these words and the ways in which we understand them. On page 175 and also up on the screen, the middle of the second paragraph on the margin. When I first read this alternative version, and in Mishkan HaNefesh, just like in the other Reformed prayer books, typically if you've got Hebrew in translation and transliteration on the right-hand side of the page, what's on the left-hand side of the page, and always with a gray wash in Mishkan HaNefesh, is some kind of interpretive response to the prayer. So the imagery here, let this day be a throne of forgiveness. It's just the image of a throne of forgiveness. For today, we are the accountants of our souls, the navigators of our hearts, seeking wholeness and new direction. The imagery here, again, composed for Mishkan HaNefesh. When I first read the words "accountants of our hearts," initially I bristled a little bit and I went, "Really, we're going to talk about accountants in the synagogue on Rosh Hashanah?" And then I thought about what it would mean to the accountant of your heart, the navigator of your soul, the navigator of your heart, right? It's just like beautiful, beautiful imagery taking off from this, and maybe a more accessible and modern way to understand this very ancient prayer. And we seek you through signs of your presence in the arc of sacred history. I make this covenant not with you alone, but with those who are standing here with us to stay, and with those who are not. Quote from Deuteronomy, Torah reading right before Rosh Hashanah, by the way. God of ages past, God past and future, God of this day, as you were with our mothers and fathers, be with us as well. Again, kind of looking at the art of composing modern liturgy, right? Interspersing that quote from the Torah reading. Now, this assumes, of course, that people were in shul and that they decided to read those verses. But if I make this covenant not with you alone, but with those of you who are sitting here today, right? That currency of Jewish mitzvah, right? The idea that we're responsible for this does not just belong to our ancient ancestors, right? And then that last line, God of ages past and future, God of this day, as you are with our mothers and fathers, be with us as well. Even the very, very, very slight thing that the composer of that reading decides to do, which is to reject the notion that inevitably, if you're going to be inclusive, you should say God of our fathers and mothers, preceding fathers with mothers. Because for ages and ages, we talked about the God of our fathers, and our mothers also have gods, and also, why does it have to be fathers and mothers? God of our mothers and fathers. It does not roll off the tongue because we're used to saying God of our fathers and mothers. So just a little kind of snippet of the gray wash page that faces. Yeah.
That last, it's going to sound snarky, but there are periods of time in history where people in the synagogue would not have thought that God was with their mothers and fathers.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes, for sure. And periods of our own day when people might think God was not with their fathers and mothers, or mothers and fathers, right? Yep. And if you're going to have trouble with the idea that things happen for a reason and God has a plan and God is the author of our fates, got news for you. U'Netaneh Tokef is about to get much worse. So, and much harder to believe. Again, we'll have a way to counterbalance that in Mishkan HaNefesh. But yeah, great. Others with questions, comments. So we're gonna push a little bit forward to the imagery, and so a great shofar will cry Tekiyah. That, by the way, is also an insertion in Mishkan HaNefesh, like a great shofar will cry Tekiyah. And every time I do it for the last 3 years, I look over at Rabbi Weiss and woof. Rabbi Weiss's dog is named Takia. And so a great shofar will cry, woof. A still small voice will be heard. Angels in a whirl of fear and trembling will say, behold the day of judgment, for they too are judged. In your eyes, even they are not blameless. Again, the Kedusha prayer, the section of Kedusha on the Shabbat and on weekdays as well, by the way, that whole section of prayer intersperses quotations mostly from the prophet Isaiah, the Kadosh, 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 jumping up on your toes. I actually just sat with a bat mitzvah student who that's her haftarah, and we talked about the fact, A, it's from the prophet Isaiah, and B, why do we go up on our toes? We are imitating the angels who in Isaiah's call vision, when he is called to become a prophet, first Isaiah, he sees the angels and they're like jumping up and down and calling out how great God is. And Isaiah is nervous to take on his mission. So we go up on our toes in order to imitate the angels. Now you know. Yeah.
Sure.
When it says they too are judged, does the they mean the angels?
The angels are getting judged. That's how serious this day is. This day is so serious that the angels, if they're doing the wrong thing, they're in trouble. Right? So the angels too are judged. They're not blameless necessarily, right? Those angels ain't no angels. All who come into the world pass before you like sheep before their shepherd. As a shepherd considers the flock when it passes beneath the staff, you count and consider every life. You set bounds, you decide destiny, you inscribe judgments. So again, toggling back and forth between this piece about the shepherd and the piece about the judge. I'm just going to check because there was something in the. Oh, okay, great. I don't need to read that out loud. Oh, close that. Okay, great. All right. So again, the imagery is right there. This is all setting us up, as I said, for what's for many people sometimes the most impactful, sometimes the most troubling aspect of the long
Service.
Yeah, the prayers that constitute U'Netaneh Tokef in their whole. So the piece that I'm referring to is the piece that begins Berosh Hashanah Yikatevu U'Yom Tzom Kippur Yechatev. On Rosh Hashanah, it is written. On the fast of Yom Kippur, this is sealed, right? And again, in the mind's ear, and you hear Rosh Hashanah Yikatevu U'Yom Tzom Kippur Yechatev. This section will continue with us through Yom Kippur as well, in part to remind us that it's written on Rosh Hashanah, it is sealed on Yom Kippur. And again, this idea of there being a book that deeds are recorded and that fates are written in goes back to the Talmud, the Babylonian Talmud, back to Tractate Rosh Hashanah, which very, very specifically, and Tractate Yoma, which very specifically talks about this imagery of God recording deeds in a book. As put in our Mishkan HaNefesh. On Rosh Hashanah, this is written. On the fast of Yom Kippur, this is sealed. How many will pass away from this world? How many will be born into it? Who will live and who will die? Who will reach the ripeness of age? Who will be taken before their time? Who by fire and who by water? Who by war and who by beast? Who by famine and who by drought? Who by earthquake and who by plague? Who by strangling and who by stoning? Who will rest and who will wander? Who will be tranquil and who will be troubled? Who will be calm and who tormented? Who will live in poverty and who in prosperity? Who will be humbled and who exalted? I am fond of saying you're allowed to read this in a whisper. I first came into the knowledge of that as a liturgical response in the Rosh Hashanah that immediately followed Hurricane Katrina. When the idea of saying, who by water? I mean, like those people, it was written last Rosh Hashanah that these people are going to be drowned by Hurricane Katrina because the levees failed because we didn't prepare appropriately. I mean, like, really? And at the same time, we say this prayer in a whisper, in part because we also know that all of these things, including people being torn by beasts, right? We think, oh, that's a very ancient text. All of these things happen today, and this year. So the truth of Rosh Hashanah Yikatevim, the truth of this text is hard to argue with, and it gets, I would say, I don't know if it's softened, I don't know if it's ameliorated, I don't know if it's challenged or overturned by the short phrase, but through return to the right path, through prayer and righteous giving, we can transcend the harshness of the decree. That, by the way, is a retranslation from Mishkan HaNefesh, one of those ones that grabbed me when I first opened this book, and I said, well, through teshuvah and tefillah and tzedakah, the decree can be averted, is I think what it said in the last version. Yeah.
This phrase, we can transcend the harshness of the decree. Well, I'm not sure what that means, because we can transcend. Does that mean get around? Does that mean climb above it? Or I just do not understand the logic.
Translation matters, right? Now the Hebrew, ma'avirin et roa hagazera. So ma'avirin, like ivri, to cross over. A Hebrew is one who crossed over, and ivri, it's the root of the word Hebrew, ma'avirin. So we can rise above, cross over, skirt around. It means something like that. This is the traditional text. Et roa, the et is just the connective. Roa, like the Hebrew word for bad, ra, roa, hagazera, the bad of the decree, or as usually translated, the evil decree, although it doesn't really mean evil, but in our English sense of the word. So again, I think that the translators in Mishkan HaNefesh were doing something important here, because previous translations, and I imagine some contemporary translations still say, if you do teshuvah, tefillah, and tzedakah, you can avoid the thing that's been decreed for you. By the way, that is a very, very dangerous theology in English, because it means that if the bad thing happened to you, you must not have done enough teshuvah, tefillah, and tzedakah. And I think that this translation is ambiguous enough, which is what's rubbing you a bit. It's ambiguous enough to say we can ameliorate it, we can soften it, we can rise above it, so experience it and yet land on the other side. We can do something even if the decree still happens, even if what has been determined for us, by doing these things, we can actually wind up on the other side. So again, when I first read this translation, we can transcend the harshness of the decree, I went, and then I looked at the Hebrew and I went, that's much closer, actually. So, yeah.
Thank you.
The decree is death.
Well, the decree is not necessarily death. It means all of the things that were in Rosh Hashanah. So death is like the final decree or the harshest decree. But, being poor, that's a decree. Being sick, that's a decree. So, yeah. By the way, I'm not defending the theology here.
I just thought that we all
just to be clear here. I'll read it, but I won't necessarily defend it. Yeah. Others, because it's an important piece to pause on.
Now, I was just thinking about the death piece, because, if, let's say, you've been estranged from a family member, and before you die, you re-engage that family member, that can transcend the harshness of the inevitable.
Yeah, for sure.
I think it's more esoteric as far as being, transcending, being more at one with God, and not really any,
So you can transcend. We can get up there, closer to God, and maybe see, like, okay, yeah, this makes sense.
or not make sense, but just an acceptance of life.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
Actually, that was the way I was starting to think. We always think in terms of the decree and the harshness, and what we're maybe really talking about, especially in terms of reform, is the social aspect or the personal aspect. And what the decrees are, we may be able to adjust to it better and to accept it better and to understand its relevance and the rest and deal with it. And so in that way, the effect of the decree is different. It's modulated.
Could well be. Yeah. We're going to go Alex and then a little bit of music.
Following up on the last two speakers here, Reform Judaism, if I understand it, which I sometimes question, is learning to see life with the various things that happen to us and to the world around us as not necessarily controlled directly by God, but what our religion does, as I say, if I understand it, is to give us a framework within which we learn to cope better. Not always to understand, but to address, to deal with, sometimes to overcome or squirm around, to transcend, if you will. Am I anywhere near the theology?
I would only say that it's not limited to Reform Judaism, and from the time of the earliest rabbis, Judaism has really struggled to hold both predetermination and human free will simultaneously, with all of their contrast and all of their contradiction, and Judaism as a religion has really truly refused to put down either of those,
So is that not
across
like
the board? Yeah.
is that not a little bit like the alternate truths that a recent president, secretary, or somebody?
We're going to go to
spoke?
some music. There we go. So at Rosh Hashanah, by the way, as I said, in your head, you likely have the version that we use here at Temple. This is a very different version. This is Cantor Arlene Bernstein at Congregation Beth Israel in San Diego, California. Very, very large Reformed congregation. And I want to give her a little bit of time to sing this as well. So I'm going to mute the room and play the music. Continues on in that way. I wanted to bring that piece because it combines the kind of traditional chazanut that some people may have grown up with, and Cantor Bernstein, ordinee of the Hebrew Union College, in a time when a few of the great chazanut teachers were there and giving that kind of like really singing from your kishkas. This is a text to sing from your kishkas. It's also a text that could probably turn your kishkas, which is why I think it's very important that that the next text appears, and you'll find in the middle of page 181 if you're looking at the book. But again, a text that I think is theologically daring to put on the opposite page. I speak these words, but I don't believe them. The Lord God formed man from the dust of the earth. Clearly, there's no scientific foundation. You know how we are formed. You remember that we are dust. And human beings are the gloriously complex product. Remember that we are dust. Of evolution from a single-celled organisms. Remember that we are dust. And as for our end, well, no need to dwell on that right now. By the sweat of your brow shall you get bread to eat until you return to the ground. So much to do and so many ways to keep busy. For from it were you taken. For dust you are, and to dust you shall return. For what would it mean if it were true after all? Again, a theologically daring counter reading. I've used it in services. I don't think we're using it this year. I can't remember. But what I love about this reading, and they didn't really reproduce it well in the slides here, but in the book you can see it. The margin is the reading, and you can read that straight down the line, and the indents in italics are all quotes from the Torah, which it gives you all the quotes as it's going, right? So you could instead read only the non-italicized. I speak these words, but I don't believe them. Clearly, there's no scientific foundation, and human beings are the gloriously complex product of evolution from single-celled organism. And as for our end, well, no need to dwell on that right now. So much to do, so many ways to keep busy. But what would it mean if it were true after all? I love readings that end with a question mark. I think they're good. So I wanted to give us at least some counters here. So we've taken the nosedive of the Rosh Hashanah and tried to pull the plane back up a little bit with Teshuvah, Tefillah, and Tzedakah. I want to give us the rest of the liturgy itself, because here comes the softening up of the judge. You are, and this is on page 180, by the way. You are everything that we praise you for, slow to anger, quick to forgive. You do not wish the death of sinners, but urge them to return from their ways and live. Until the day of death, you wait for them. You accept them at once if they return. Since you created us, you know our impulses. We are but flesh and blood. We who are mortal, our origin is dust, and so is our end. We wear out our lives to get our bread, like broken vessels, like withered grass, like a flower that must fade, a shadow moving on, a cloud passing by, mere dust on the wind, a dream that flies away. Again, this is like beautiful poetry, By the way, this is the traditional text. That's a very, very, very faithful translation of the Hebrew, which has been the text of this prayer for, I don't know, it could be up to 1,400 years, 1,500 years, maybe. That feels like very modern poetry, but or at least 20th century poetry, but it's not. And then the prayer itself concludes, page 182. But for you, ever-living sovereign, time has no limits. Your presence, unbounded by days and years, is everywhere. A glorious mystery none can decipher. Your name is worthy of you, and you are worthy of your name, and our name you have linked with yours. And that is the whole of the prayer that begins with U'Netaneh Tokef. This is the whole. That is the whole section that is called by that term. We'll pause for a moment of some quick reactions or questions if there are some, and then I want to actually look at two more short texts and maybe hear one more piece of music. So yeah.
You know, I was thinking there's a lot of literature and movies about someone who gets told they have an incurable disease, and the movie's about what they do with the rest of their life. And it seems to me there's two options. One is I'm going to go to Disneyland, or I'm going to do something fun. You know, I'm going to go through my bucket list, get everything done. But there's also the people who, you know, like Gary was saying, they reconnect with family, or they do something reminiscent of what the prayer says is the right thing to do to mitigate the decree.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm going to turn it around. I'm going to extend it, right? I'm going to take that countdown clock on my forehead and boost it up. Yeah, okay, sure. Let's do it.
Yeah, it's strange, but I always think of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur in terms of solemnity of the holiday and the sharing, that the judge is also, you know, oneself. And it takes you out of the everyday, and it really focuses you on a kind of accountability for the year and for the next year, and where you were and what you've done, what other people may see it as, what you see it as, and it's kind of what can you do, you know, to kind of move forward and to do things.
Yeah, we'll give you the reading, accountants of our souls, navigators of our hearts. Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Good.
The last lines there, your name is worthy of you, and you are worthy of your name. And our name you have linked with yours. So the first part of what I just read about the name always puzzled me. What name are we dealing with?
Doesn't matter what name.
Okay.
God.
So did the
All
deity
things that mean God.
or God with a capital G?
Yeah. Yep.
Thank you.
And that, by the way, is a pretty good example of what my first liturgy teacher in my first year of rabbinical school, Rabbi Moshe Silverstein, an Orthodox rabbi, he titled that Audacious Covenant Theology. And what is Audacious Covenant Theology? It is when you tell God how wonderful God is with a hand going, and because you're so wonderful, by the way, just don't forget, you know, you are so generous, generous, right? And we're reminding God that our name is linked to yours. So as goes things for the Jews, so goes God's reputation. Right? That's a bold thing to say. By the way, it's a bold thing to say, especially if we think, if you don't accept my myth busting, that this is written in the time of widespread massacres of Jews throughout the Rhineland, right? That's a really audacious thing to say. Like, hey, did you notice that we're getting slaughtered in the streets? That's a PR problem for you, God. Do something about it, right? So that's audacious. Yeah.
I just remember reading a snip from the prayer book that there's a prayer during this time where the cantor prostrates himself.
Yeah.
Is this the one?
No, so that's the Great Aleinu. Also coming on Rosh Hashanah, and the core use of the prayer Aleinu that we've appended to the end of pretty much every service originates only in Rosh Hashanah and involves full prostration on the floor. Yeah.
And it's a different prayer.
Yeah, Becca and I go We do a pretty good bend, but not a full
You're
on
not
the
gonna
floor.
Well, I was just
Yeah.
thinking of
But it
that,
would fit.
the
It would fit here,
sovereign,
right?
the,
Yes.
you bow to
Yeah.
the sovereign.
Great. I do want to give us two more texts, and they're on page 173. If you're looking in the book, on page 173, you see, and 172, there are two blue washed pages. The key of Mishkan HaNefesh is if a page is washed in blue, it's not necessarily meant to be read aloud. It's more of a study text. Although I don't really listen to that sometimes. Sometimes I use those as aloud readings. And I want to do the one on the bottom and then the one on the top, and there's a reason why I want to do them in that order. So the one on the bottom, written by Rabbi David Teich, who was the longtime president of the Reconstructionist Rabbinical College, longtime head of Reconstructionist Judaism, a theologian, a writer, really very influential, particularly in the Reconstructionist world. I'm interested by the fact that they decided to give him a nice big chunk in the officer. And he was really responsible for writing and compiling the Reconstructionist movement's Machzors. The Kol HaNeshama series really came under Rabbi Teich's direction. So he writes, in our everyday lives, we live with an illusion of control. We guard our health by eating well, exercising, and getting regular checkups. We get ahead professionally by working hard and building effective relationships. At the liturgical moment of U'Netaneh Tokef, we are forced to admit how profoundly our lives can be altered by random occurrences over which we have no control. A brain hemorrhage or heart attack can come out of nowhere. A drunk driver can cripple or kill. A parent can have to bury a child. An organization's sudden economic reversals can unexpectedly result in layoffs or firings. A healthy pregnancy can end with a stillbirth. A competent person can be unable to find work. A trusted marriage can collapse. In my heart of hearts, I know that I have as little control as any other sheep in the flock. At the moment of U'Netaneh Tokef, I know for certainty that my life hangs in the balance. When these high holidays end, I may be lulled back into my false sense of security, the cocoon of my routine. But today, I feel my exposure, sense the danger inherent in life, re-encounter my mortality. My end is dust. I cannot control the unexpected blows that will affect my family, my job, my health, but I can control how I live with them. Teshuvah, and I love how he does this, Teshuvah, cultivating a spiritual life and returning to Torah. Tefillah, cultivating gratitude and connecting with transcendent values. And tzedakah, cultivating generosity and pursuing justice, will mitigate the bad in the decree. Teshuvah, tefillah, and tzedakah will not stop stock market crashes, lung cancer, or the other blows that come our way, but they can radically transform how we are affected by those blows. I love the way he translates and makes real all of this. I think it should probably be required reading at that section of the service, so now you'll see these blue wash pages. And I want to conclude and give in tribute the text on the top of that same page. Our actions help us live in such a way that when we suffer life's darkest depredations, we will always have ways of coping with them. Our actions may not change the ultimate outcome one iota, but they alter our attitude, bolster our ability to withstand challenges, help us handle unavoidable misfortunes better, and see life's value amid chaos and dismay. It's a text that in the Machzor itself, initially, the print run of this Machzor, which was done, I think, in 2016 or 17, read Rabbi Aaron Pankin, 1964. And Rabbi Aaron Pankin, who was president of the Hebrew Union College and dean of the New York campus when I attended the campus, as well as probably the single person most responsible for me actually getting into rabbinical school. That's a story for another day. But the single person most responsible for me not getting into rabbinical school. Again, story for another day. I'm just priming the pump. Aaron Pankin, a brilliant scholar, but even more so a mensch of a man, was also a very, very gifted and talented aviator. And in 2018, crashed and died. And And this reading, which initially was listed in the Machzor only with his birth date, the first run of these Machzors had only 1964 in them. They corrected, and the Machzor I was using to prep today with only had his birth date in there, and so I wrote in there because it's a reminder that all of what Rabbi Toich says as well is true. We can put ourselves. Yeah, some of you may have one that only has a birth date in it too. The first run that we got only had. We can lull ourselves into the safety and believe that we are immune to all of these things, or we can remind ourselves at least once, a couple times a year, that nothing is promised. And we can do so many things to try to make ourselves in a better position, but nothing is promised. So, yeah.
If I recall correctly, which in this case I think I do, he died in an experimental aircraft or low production aircraft, Italian machine that may have just been through a maintenance cycle, whatever. He was flying it on the Sabbath.
He was flying on Shabbat, absolutely. 100%, yes. Yeah, I was with my fellow rabbis who were all very attached to him on Sunday morning when we heard the news when he was flying on Shabbat, absolutely. Yes, which I have no criticism of. And the idea, the idea that I could imagine in some Orthodox newspaper that there would have been a newspaper clipping that would say, Reform leader dies in airplane flying on the Sabbath, right? And that to me is like the gravest violation of God's reality. But that is definitely that's an article that you can see appearing. So anyway, I thank everyone for spending some time with these texts tonight. I had more that I went to teach and more that I went to share, but that's okay because we've gone a little bit over. But there is one last thing that needs to happen during the month of Elul every day. It is a tradition to hear the sound of the shofar as a way of waking our hearts up, as if your heart's not awake already. But if anyone's sleeping right now, you're about to be woken. I wish one and all a Shana Tova. It's still a little bit early because I've got a couple of weeks, but I hope you come back either in person or on the Zoom next week for session number 2. And thanks for being here tonight.
Thank you.
Again, we're going to collect the books back. I'm going to put them with Rabbi Weiss's office and see if they want to